Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So it is an early morning show, 7:55 in the AM. I am going to do a series of shows today. I wasn't around to do them yesterday, so let's get some in today. I have a few good ones that I want to do. This is one good one, at least I think so. Let me check my sound, make sure my sound is good. My mic sounds nice. While I check this, please hit the notification, guys. People are saying that they're not getting the notifications. And I'm sorry my voice is a little cloudy. I've been up all night, not able to sleep. I did a video, I think like 4 something this morning. And so, but I'm awake. I'm kicking. So, you can see me. I've spoken to Jordan Chariton. Jordan Chariton has said he's going to come on the show. That's going to be within 2 weeks, not this week, but next week. Well, not next week, the week after. And I've been speaking with Tim Canova, and it's possible he's going to be coming on next week. So, interesting 2 weeks coming up. Both should be damn good. For this story, and before I even get to the story, guys, I want to thank all of you who help support the show. Whether it's through Patreon, whether it's through Super Cash, whether it's like my videos, whether it's sharing my videos, however you do it, I absolutely appreciate it. And it's one of those things that makes this channel what it is. And I always say that because it's true. Like, it is impossible to have a chat, like with back and forth when you're talking to your audience, if there is no audience to have a chat with. It is a difficult thing to continue on with the channel if there's nobody watching the channel. It's just kind of the way it is. So I'm appreciative, humbled by it in some weird way. Like, I can't believe it's 10,000 subscribers. Like, I'm blown away by that. And it was like this, just a slow build up over time, where it wasn't this massive jump, just slowly this trickle, one after the next after the next. I remember starting with like one and be like, you get a subscriber, and I tell my wife, hey, somebody subscribe to my channel. And you get 10, somebody subscribe to my channel. And she's like, dude, you need to stop. So 10,000. I appreciate it, guys. That's my point. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A document comes out, an article. And in the article, they're having a conversation, Democrats, DCCC, that's the arm of the Democratic Party that helps congressional candidates get elected. And it's done polling, and based on the polling, it's giving them advice on how they should run and craft the language of their campaigns. I read this, and I'm going to read it to you. I got more annoyed than I think I probably should have gotten annoyed. And I at first I didn't quite understand why. When I first read this document, I've read this document a few times. The first time I read it, I was slightly buzzed. I was kind of like going through, literature, looking over articles and stuff like that. And I've said before, when I am buzzed, my heart center gets enacted. It gets connected. And as I'm reading through the story, something leapt out at me and stood there, and it annoyed me. There was a disparity between my cynicism versus how I wanted things to be. And the difference between those things was annoyance. The difference between those things was annoyance. Let's read the article first, and I would explain what I'm talking about. Because I find this to be profoundly sad. Profoundly sad for us as a country, for Democrats, for all of us. Just what it means for the state of our government, for the state of politics, worldwide politics, but locally, we're talking about the United States, for the state of our politics. That this is the way we pursue our affairs. I'll show you what I mean. Let's read it first. This is, let's flip it. And this is Axios. DCCC polling, Democratic candidates should be open to working with Trump. That's not really the bad part, believe it or not. That's not really the bad part. Because I'll explain what I mean when I say that. New internal polling conducted for the DCCC by Greensburg, Quillian, Rosner Research suggests that Democratic candidates running in swing districts must express a willingness to work with the president when his agenda might help their district. The survey also recommends that Democrats not appear out of sync with what people believe about the economy. Essentially, don't push against the tide. You see this all the time in politics. It's one of those things that politicians do almost reflexively. So let's say Bernie Sanders is talking to Chuck Todd. Bernie Sanders is having a conversation with Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd asking him something about Syria. Now, Bernie Sanders does not want to take a war position, meaning the position that he takes wants to be somewhat more rational in this regard. By the same token, he can't say anything nice about Bashar al-Assad because he understands that the American public is against Bashar al-Assad. So he's going to open up saying, Bashar al-Assad is a horrible guy. He's an asshole. He's a fucking horrible person. But, and he's going to immediately pivot to what he wants to say. He satisfies this agenda of saying, this is in line with what the American public thinks. I'm in line with what they think. There's no friction. And now this is what I actually want to say. I need to say both because I need to balance the equation in a weird way. It's the way they do politics. It's strange, but you see it over and over and over again. This is making the point of saying, look, don't go out of line of what the American public think about the economy. If they think it's doing good, just say it's doing good. If they think it's doing bad, say it's doing bad. Steer the conversation into other avenues. Let's let him keep going. Why it matters. President Trump's election unleashed the far left wing of the Democratic Party, but moderate Democrats are the party's likely path to the majority. This new polling warns Democrats away from campaigning specifically against Trump and, instead, towards embracing the improving economy with a message focused on the middle class. I like this part. This part trips me out. President Trump's election unleashed the far left wing of the party. No. It wasn't the win. It wasn't the win. What are you talking about? Bernie Sanders was there before Trump was elected. Like, that stuff was unleashed before Donald Trump was elected. That stuff, like, the monster was uncovered when you're talking about feel the burn and everything else, all that stuff. That was before Trump. You can't attribute that to Trump. That's kind of my point. You have a lot of Democrats who are freaking out. Fair enough. But that's not really the left, per se. That's not the base. I mean, maybe a portion of the base, fair enough. But at the very least, the sandbox, the Sanders, the burners, the people who are out there rattling and freaking out. That was before Trump. But let's keep going. Maybe we're talking about a different version of the left. Maybe his idea of left is different than mine. The key findings of that the research group believes the DCCC candidates fighting for the 101 targeted GOP House seats should focus on. 56% of voters are confident about their economic future. Therefore, the group suggests Democrat messaging shows they want an economy centered on the middle class and regular folks, while the Republicans' agenda favors powerful special interests at the expense of the middle class. Republicans don't get credit for improving the economy. 58% say the economy is improving due to long-term trends that work of American people, while 40% credit Trump and Republicans. Democratic candidates are encouraged not to talk about the improving economy as a great thing, but to shy away from describing it in negative terms that causes people to tune us out. Voters think the wealthy and big corporations benefit the most from the improving economy and the GOP tax law. Big picture. Democratic candidates want to capture voters who might otherwise vote Republican. The research suggests that they counter Republican pro-growth business tax cuts message with a Democratic message that appeals to independent women and swing voters. They're trying to get Republican voters. That's the first point. They're talking about swing states. And I read this, and like I said, I saw it. I was annoyed by this. I was greatly annoyed by this, and I couldn't figure out immediately why I was so annoyed by this. And I figured out what it was. There was a time, there had to be, where the first politician, the first guy, the first man, the first person, the first woman, the first whatever, and they said, look, we're creating this structure, this thing, and we're going to use it to govern our affairs. we as beings, whatever this type of beings are, we as beings, we need a way to organize our affairs. And one of us is no more important than any other of us. All of us have equal value. So we're going to be able to vote in this process. We're going to create some process that allows us to do this. And let's say in this case, it's a representative government. The first man, there had to be a point where they were earnest and honest, and they were working in the benefit of the regular person. Meaning the population, whatever that population was, when they went in to do work in the same way that when you go to your job to do work. They were earnest. There was loyal opposition. The politics of it understood that they were doing it for the reasons of the people themselves, meaning they were representing the interests of the people. If there were conflicts, there were actual conflicts. They weren't political conflicts. They weren't theater. They were actual conflicts. They resolved those things. As human beings, resolve those things. That was in me when I read this. I can be cynical. And I understand that when I read this, that this is messaging. I had no expectations for Democrats doing anything other than messaging. So it wasn't like I was blown away by reading this particular document. Not in the least. I wasn't blown away by the results of this document. Did you really send somebody to find out whether or not it was cold in winter? Yeah. People understand that they're being screwed over. They understand that this tax cut is going to go to the wealthy. They may not necessarily know the numbers because they may not necessarily pay attention to the news that well, but they get it. From a flesh to bone way, they get it. They know they're being screwed. They know the Republicans' modus operandi. So they know that them passing this was doing this for reasons only for themselves. This is not news to them. They're not shocked by this. I understand that you guys are doing polling and everything else. I guess my feeling in this was, what are your values? What are your values? The first man, the first honorable politician that did this had something in him that when he went about doing his job, that people put him in that position because of it. At some point, the second man, the third man, some point along the way, somebody realized, hey, you can fudge this a little bit. You can get something out of this a little bit. You can push this a little bit. And one corruption, one corrosive aspect after the next, and the flaw has been revealed. And year after year after year after year after year after year, until it finally pushes and expresses itself into our current day politicians. What do you represent? Is that not a fair question? What do you stand for? And I'm talking about the Democratic Party at this point. And let's be fair. Let's be fair. Here. I want to talk about nobody behind their back. What do you represent? I know you're in a hospital. I don't care. What do you represent? I'm trying to understand. What do you represent? Is that not a fair question? And I don't ask this just for myself. Pardon the arrogance for the moment. I ask this on behalf of the rest of the American public. All of us would like to know this answer. The reason why I ask this is, you had a situation where Tom Perez jumps around the country, screams about his values. So when I ask this, I ask this using your own iconography. I'm not asking this from the standpoint of somebody else attacking you from the standpoint of somebody else. I'm using your own language. What are your values? You scream about your values constantly. What are those values? Tom Perez was leading with his values before he became DNC chief. And he was telling the Hillary Clinton campaign, advising them that they should use Bernie Sanders' race, the fact that Bernie Sanders is white, to tar him, to make him radioactive to minorities. That's leading with his values. That's what he was doing before, in this kind of weird way, ending up being the DNC chair, breaking their own bylaws in order to get him into that position. Donna Brazile was leading with her values when she was sending information over to Hillary Clinton camp and was fired for CNN for doing so. When they asked Donna Brazile, who eventually became head of the DNC herself, Trevor Noah, what does the DNC represent? What does the Democratic Party stand for? What are your values? And Donna Brazile, longtime Democrat, 30-some years, could not answer the question. She ended up saying, well, we picked Tom Perez. We picked Tom Perez. What do you stand for? Your presidential candidate screamed that everybody was sexist because they wouldn't vote for her, was running in a race where she was literally, potentially, going to be perp walked and could have been federally convicted of a crime. Even then, she was still monetizing the State Department. This is the person you guys put up. You guys put up somebody who you thought you could just choose as opposed to select. This doesn't get down to the cheating that took place in the primaries. You guys always complain that Republicans are monkeying around with the votes in the way that they rigged the process at the polls, like excluding people from the voter rolls and everything else. You did the same thing. You did the same thing. What are your values? When I ask you that question, what are your values? I'm trying to make the point to you that the real world reality of what those things are show a lot more than what you say out of your mouth. Be honest. We understand Barack Obama's values when he made sure that those Wall Street banks didn't go to prison, while at the same token, once he gets out, monetizes. Oh, give me the money. I kept you guys out of prison. You sniveling bitches need to be happy now. Pay me. Give me speeches. Give me speeches. I'm trying to get this point to you that we don't understand what your values are. At the very least, we have an idea of what your values are. And it's not what you tell us. The fact that you lose so much. All of those losses all throughout the United States to maniacs, to one of the most rapacious group of Republicans that has ever set foot on this planet. You lost to maniacs. Certainly those people who chose those Republicans over you, they understood that your values weren't what you say they are. So what are they? Whisper in my ear. Confess. Tell me. I want to know. I want to know. Fact is, people who mean it, who believe it, who actually have something that drills down in them, what they're giving you here is messaging. Messaging itself is just used to cover something. It's almost like the Democratic Party and Republican Party are corporate entities. Just like Pepsi, just like Coke, just like M&M's. This messaging is the husk that it throws over, or it's like a burlap sack or something that it throws over. And this is the messaging of the party. I understand that this is the messaging of the party. It's like the M&M is not really an M&M. Yes, it moves and everything on the screen, but that's just computer programming that allows it to do it. There is no real M&M. The cereal is not magically delicious. I'm trying to make the point that all of these things are just messaging, propaganda. What's beneath it? Is there a there there? And if so, what is that there? Me, the rest of the public, we want to know. Don't tell me about Republicans. We're not looking at this as a binary choice. Each one of these things is selective or distinct from one another. Meaning, if I'm having a conversation about Republicans, I'm having a conversation about them. At this point, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you. What on earth do you represent? The truth is, the unvarnished truth is, there is a distinction between who you are and who I am. Now, I make that point this year to show that there is a distinction between... Why do I have to bring you to the trough? Why? This is kind of getting to the root of the matter. While I'm asking, what are your values? What are your realities? What do you stand for? What do you represent? Why do I have to continuously bring you to the trough? Do you believe in single-payer healthcare? Yes or no? Why do I have to bring you to the trough? Do you believe that people should get an education, a free education, meaning the state itself believes that education is such paramount that it's going to make sure that kids don't have $50,000 of debt on their heads when they get out of school? How about that? Why do we have to continuously bring you to the trough on these things if you are supposed to be ideologically bent to be there anyway? They have that abroad. How do they have that abroad, but you don't necessarily have that here? This is the richest country on the planet. How do they have it in those other countries? Do you know there are kids in those other countries that in no way ever would even consider having all that debt on their backs? They wouldn't even know what that is. They're shocked to find that there are people out there, that there are societies that has punished their kids in that way. You failed in your task as representing the left. And to make the point clear, this is what the left used to look like. And the reason why I say, why do I have to bring you to the trough? If I have to bring you to these things, it means you weren't there. Where were you and why were you there if you weren't already there? Meaning, if you're not in this spot, if you're not here, if you're not on board for these things, then what are you on board for? Who are you? What do you represent? Nobody knows. The public. That question lingers like a bad smell. This is literally what the Democratic Party used to look like. There was one moment in history where you were this glimmering star, this thing, coming out with this idea of a workers' bill of rights. You would have led the world. You had the opportunity to lead the world, and you failed miserably at it. You let it go. And not just let it go, you became somewhat of a cancer and a rot on the things in the party and the edifice itself. Look at what these guys were compared to look at what these guys are now. They need to give messaging. They need to explain how they need to lie and to con their audience, as opposed to actually having a core and actually having to talk about their audience. Do you know what the public actually wants? You could have saved all of the money that you spent on this and just watched this channel. Do you know what the public wants? They want you to be earnest. They want you to represent their interests. They know they're being fucked over. They want you to represent their interests. They want you to be the bellwether. And yeah, if it's something that Trump is doing that is not necessarily batshit crazy, that's going to be beneficial, they don't want you to reflexively do it because they don't reflexively do it. When they're doing their jobs at work, they go to work. There may be people at work that they don't necessarily get along with, but they still work and deal with those people. They don't understand why Congress can't do the same. That's what you're seeing in your polling results. That's why your polling result looks that way. It's not that they just want Donald Trump work with them on everything. No, they look at it as if the president is doing something that's beneficial, yes. That's common sense. For most people, that's common sense. If I agree with Rand Paul that they shouldn't lock stoners up, then I agree with Rand Paul. If I am in Congress and Rand Paul passes the legislation that does that, yes, I am going to sign on to that bill because for that specific thing, I agree. That's what human beings do when they interact with one another. You didn't need polling for that. Do you really need to send somebody to the Sahara Desert to know that it's hot? Yes, people believe they're being fucked over. Yes, they want somebody to represent their interests. No, they don't believe you're earnest in this, so they don't want you harping about the economy being a horrible thing. But if they thought you were earnest, if they thought you did represent their interests, it would be different. It would be different. They want you to be earnest. They want you to represent their interests. They want you to work with the president on things that they think will represent them. They want you to be a human being. Yes, they want you to be pushed back on policies that's going to go adversely against them and their interests. That is common sense as common sense can be. It is amazing that you needed a poll to tell you this. And it's sad that you needed a poll to tell you this. And it gets at this thing of, how are you so out of touch and how are you so detached from the actual world that you actually needed somebody to go out and explain what people are feeling, the pain that people are feeling? It is amazing to me that you had to do this particular poll. Take a look at what Democrats used to be. Where's your core? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Why do you need messaging? The messaging itself is just what you're throwing over the husk of the Democratic Party. What I'm trying to get at is, what is under the husk of the Democratic Party? Explain to us. Whisper in our ears. Confess. Because nobody's buying what you're selling. Look at what they were. Look at how glorious this was. Glorious and fucking euphoric.
For nearly 4 years now, you have had an administration which, instead of twirling its thumbs, has rolled up its sleeves. And I can assure you that we will keep our sleeves rolled up. We had to struggle with the old enemies of peace, business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, war profiteering. They had begun to consider the government of the United States as a mere appendage to their own affairs. And we know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob. Never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred. I should like to have it said of my first administration that in it the forces of selfishness and of lust for power met their match. I should like to have it said, wait a minute, I should like to have it said of my second administration that in it these forces met their master.
That's what they used to be. Do you know how profound what he just said was? And there are going to be some people who look at this and be like, that guy was a Democrat? Yes, that guy was a Democrat. That guy was the Democrat. The iconography of what the Democratic Party is today is from his stamp going back to the 40s. That's how profound of an effect he had on it. And that's how long it took Democrats to undo everything that this man put into place that was a Democrat, while at the same token keeping the language. Listen to what he said, making this argument that speculation, bankers, war profiteering, all the things that the Democratic Party are perfectly in line with and organized with. He will be rolling in his grave. All the things that he was fighting against. When he's saying they are aligned against him, I welcome their hatred. But they were aligned against him because they were trying to get their tentacles into the government. And he's making this point that I said that the forces of lust met their match in the first administration. I'm saying that they've met their master in this one. Think about that. That is the president of the United States with a screaming crowd screaming at the top of their lungs for this man. When he's saying all of these plutocrats and 1%ers are out there that are trying to take it and put their tentacles in the government. I am standing here. I am the wall. That is fucking profound. That is when you were at your best. That is when you were living up to your philosophical responsibilities. That is you in the full expression of yourself of what you are and what it would mean to be a Democrat. You are fallen far from that particular example. Extraordinarily far from that example. And maybe that's the thing that annoys the shit out of me. That's what maybe the thing that annoys me. The poverty in this country, the difficulties that people have in this country. These guys are talking in some respects about cutting Social Security. Bill Clinton was going to cut Social Security. People are having difficult times and difficult lives in the richest country on the planet. Resources could be available to these people. Many of these people don't even know. It would be the responsibility of the left to do this, and the left have fundamentally failed in that responsibility, and that left is supposed to be the Democratic Party. Yeah, I get ignored by this. I get annoyed by this. And if I'm being honest, some of this is somewhat selfish or self-centered on my part. Having to deal with medical stuff when I was growing up, this was a pain in the ass. This was a pain point. Like medical bills. If I was in another country, if I was born in Britain, I would be clear. If I was born anywhere in Europe, I would be absolutely clear. But just so happened I was born in America. And in America, we like to rape over patients and get everything that we can out of them. And so that's what we do. Beat them over the head from the cradle to the grave. Is that the world that you want? Is that the country that you want? And in the same way that the left has fundamentally let down unions, in the same way they fundamentally let down workers, they've also let down the American populace to live up to the philosophical responsibilities that they were supposed to live up to. Do you know that man was talking about a workers' Bill of Rights? You can't even get Democrats to line up for $15 an hour minimum wage. They failed. They failed. They've outright failed to live up to those responsibilities. And yet, they're going to want people to vote for them. And so how do you deal with that, wanting people to vote for them? You come up with a message. You find some advertisement to con those people into their votes. The truth of the matter is, the fundamental truth is, you've allowed your philosophical responsibilities, the political obligations of your offices, to essentially get overridden by your own personal gains. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Essentially, and I said it in a weird way, but you have certain responsibilities as a politician and as a Democrat, certain philosophical, political responsibilities, even from the standpoint of stepping back beyond that point, just from a country standpoint and the things, the forces that are acting in the country and the opposition and the class antagonisms, in a sense, from the standpoint of this classical Democrat and Republican of rich versus poor. You've allowed the rich to subsume the party that is supposed to represent the poor. No wonder unions are so weak. No wonder workers' rights have suffered under your administration or this change in what the Democratic Party has become. Of course it was going to be that way. You've let the rich subsume the party that's supposed to represent the poor, leaving a wisp of this party with still spouting these things as if it's somehow the Workers' Party. Yeah, this annoyed me. This annoyed me. At the end of the day, it lingers. What do you represent? And who do you represent? And again, I think it's understood who. I think it's understood who, and it's not us. They have fallen far from the model of what that man said. And they still spout the stuff as if they're representing their interests in the same way that he's saying that hope and change could have been an FDR thing. In no way was Obama anywhere near FDR, anywhere near any of these other Democrats, and near what this guy was saying and the things that he was putting out and espousing. This is a con. This is language. This is propaganda. What's beneath it? What's beneath it? Who do you represent? That's the question. That's the fundamental question. All of this is con job stuff. This is how do we get the public to vote for us? And one last point. This is going slightly too long. They pivoted. They made a pivot. Meaning, when they got to the election, they never interrogated why they failed and why they lost. They immediately went to this idea of Trump and Russia. Meaning, they never wanted to interrogate themselves. They never wanted to any level of introspection. They wanted to, we lost, we failed miserably, let's just get up and just attack Trump. And maybe if we continue to attack Trump, people will pay no attention to us and they'll be so terrified of Trump, they'll just put us back in office and the world will be great. It will be dancing in Skittles and rainbows. That may work. It may not. We will find out. What's missing here, however, is actual representation of the people who they're trying to get to vote for. And that's the thing that I think that pisses me off. So, this has gone far too long. But, let's see who's here this morning. Democrats lead with their deceptions. Change it. Yes, agreed. Keep wages low and everyone slaves to debt. Liz H. DNC status quo. Well, this is kind of gets to my point. They've been captured. FDR was making this point that plutocrats need to be fought and beat back. And I am your champion. I'm fucking FDR. And he was. And he did. Now, the catch to this is, he's making this argument that he is beating these forces back. Democrats aren't beating these forces back. Democrats get money from these forces to run in those contests. Why did FDR feel he needed to beat these forces back, but Democrats feel that they can take the money from these forces and still be okay? I'm trying to show the disparity between these two things. How one actually did represent a certain interest, and the other one does not. They talk a particular game, but that talk is just, it's almost like a whisper of what they were. Just kind of like a zombie that's just kind of running and walking on. He thinks he's human. He's kind of humanish, but not so much. There's no soul. There's no heart. There's nothing else there. It's just a zombie. It's kind of how it is. Just, yeah. Let's see. FDR, interesting economic message, terrifying treatment of Japanese Americans in internment camps. Thrown, of course, so yes. Nobody's perfect. I'm not saying it was. I'm talking about from an economic standpoint. Hoot Burns. Also, unions in third had to pressure FDR into some of the economic reforms he's known for. Yes, that's true. But he did it nonetheless. He did it nonetheless. Look, all politics, to some degree, has to do with a certain amount of pressure. But I'm asking, what is your disposition? Like, he was pushing for a workers' bill of rights. He put William Wallace, I'm saying his name wrong, Wallace, as his vice president. We would have had a fundamentally different history if Wallace was president as opposed to Truman. Like, I'm trying to get a point across. Yes, he might have had pressure, fair enough, but he did it. He did it. And he didn't do it half-ass. He did it. He did it. All I'm saying is there is a distinction between who they were versus who they are. Who they were versus who they are. And I say the beginning and end of that is, look, for all intents and purposes, they have a philosophical responsibility. They let that philosophical responsibility lag for their own personal gain, for their own personal prosperity. That's what it boils down to. They need to get elected. How do you get elected? I need to take cash. They want a certain amount of status. They want a certain amount of influence. They need to bow a particular way in the particular party apparatus, whatever that is, whatever that advancement is. They did what they had to do in order to win and get elected, while fundamentally missing the entire point of the process, that the election is not about just getting elected. It's about representing the interests of the people who are voting for you. Fundamentally fail. Gardner, make no mistake, FDR was an expansionist capitalist. He was happy to rape the third world just like his predecessors. I never said he wasn't a capitalist. In fact, he said his biggest achievement was saving capitalism. I'm making the point he's a Democrat. And he never said he was anything other than that. I'm just saying, if they're going to be Democrats, be Democrats. At least be Democrats. They're not even that. They're fucking Republicans. Fucking Republicans. I mean, can you imagine us saying about a president after he or she has put a bunch of Muslims in camps and say he ain't perfect, but it's like his policies we like? Stable genius. I understand your point. I understand your point. Yeah, I understand your point. These guys were at war. Yeah. No. I mean, what's losing me is Japan had just bombed Pearl Harbor. We were at a particular war, and this guy put these guys in internment camps. It's not necessarily that I think it's right. It's that I think it was a mistake. I don't think. Yeah, I don't. I get your point. I get your point. I think I somewhat disagree, but I get your point. I do get your point. But FDR also signed Medicare, made it to millions of old people across America didn't have to live in poverty and eat dog food anymore. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying he's not perfect. I compare him to leaders around his time. He had an internment camp. That was a mistake. It wasn't right. It wasn't right. It's like I don't want to downplay that, but it's like I am judging him by what was taking place at the time around him. It's like saying, it's like, how do you judge Rome, or how do you judge Greece, or how do you judge those other states? How can you really judge them by what's taking place today? But I feel you. I get your point. I get your point. Yes, FDR is a good case study in how far to the right the party has moved. Yes, he is. He is. He really is. Look, it wouldn't bother me so much if they changed their language. Like, if they just used language like they were Republicans. Like, for instance, if they just act like the conservative party, if they call themselves conservatives, and they say, you know, we're not Democrats anymore, we're the conservative party. No issue. No issue. I would still attack them, but I would attack them as they were conservatives. I attacked them as hypocrites. I attack them as hypocrites. That's my attack. Yeah. Tim Bradley, Bob Morris, who else was that? Let's see. The Greens, these aren't trolls you're looking for. Bob, that's funny. That's funny. Stable genius progressive. FDR, in my opinion, is a good case study in the duality of man, of how we're capable, all of us, including our leaders, of great compassion or great evil. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. You've heard me say on multiple occasions, you know, this human thing that has this awesome and terrifying potential for awesome fucking things that at the same time, terrible nightmares. Yeah. Agreed. I admire many of FDR's accomplishments. It just annoys me when people lionize him. And I do lionize him. So yeah, you're probably going to be annoyed. I do lionize him. I do lionize him. Because of all the presidents, he drilled down into the public consciousness of what was possible by a president. Regardless of his failures, his fuck-ups, foibles, all those bad choices, whatever. He drilled into the American conscience. When people think of Medicare, FDR, they think of him. When they're thinking of lefty policies, when they're thinking about unions and all that other stuff, they're talking about him. They're talking about going all the way back to the 40s. Like, they're not even looking forward in regards to, like, worker co-ops or something else. I'm trying to, so yeah, people do lionize him because it's somewhat sacrosanct. I mean, the guy is fucking lying. Can you please explain how your stance on FDR and internment camps is different from your annoyance with Jenks Nerf bombs? I don't understand the question. I mean, FDR has internment camps. FDR was at a war with Japan at the time. FDR made a bad choice with regards to how he was pursuing his war. Cenk Uygur is talking about them dropping a bomb on Syria and acting as if them dropping a bomb is in no way them actually dropping a bomb. It's an internment camp. They were at a war. What do you want me to say? There's no way around it. But that has nothing to do if we're talking about economic policy, which is the point of this. It's nothing to do with it. Progressive voice, the new FDR fall under his leadership tomorrow. Oh, come on. Look, you guys, I understand that people can take issue with some of the things that leaders do. All of us do it. I myself, if I'm having a conversation about FDR, I may bring up the fact that he's the internment camps. It's a bad choice. Like, I don't, it's not, George Bush invading a country and killing 1 million people. It's not the same thing as FDR with an internment camp. A Nerf bomb, or making a statement saying that this person was dropping Nerf bombs when they were actual real bombs and those real bombs was exploding, has nothing to do with internment camps. I don't even see how the analogy fits. You lionize him in rhetoric, but you're aware of his flaws. I wasn't referring to you really. Yeah, nobody is perfect. There is no... When I'm having a conversation about Bernie Sanders and somebody says, well, hey, man, Bernie Sanders believes this. Okay. You've mentioned something that Bernie Sanders believes that is somewhat off based on your own value system. Fair enough. What does that have to do with me, and what does that have to do with whether I support him or not? Nothing. There may become a point where it's like, okay, it crosses a red line in regards to my support for Sanders. But one thing does not. Yeah, I don't have that purest point of view when I look at these things. I look at these things as people. I look at what people were doing around the time in regards to leaders. I look at what they were doing in regards to their government, their policy, and everything else. And fact is, even with the internment camps, what I've said about him is a flat fact. It's unimpeachable. When people think about FDR, or when they think about this kind of what does it means to be a Democrat and all this other stuff, from a philosophical standpoint, they go back to him. Bob Romero said, if the Green Party started to go anywhere, the Clintons would be right there. Their platform is identical to the DNC, right down to putting identity into the division at the top of the list. That's not true, Bob. Come on, Bob. Be fair. Be fair, Bob. Be fair. Come on. Are you telling me you're really, with a straight face, Bob, and I know I can't see your face, but with a straight face, that the Greens platform, which I've seen, by the way, is identical to the Clintons platform? Look, the Greens do put identity in the platform, but you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I am a virulent defender of identity. I don't want to deal with racists. I don't want to deal with people who are xenophobic. That extends to people going after Russians and everything else. Hate it. I have no tolerance for it. When we interact with people, we interact with it as equals. Does that mean I can't also deal with economics? No, it doesn't. In fact, doesn't mean that economics will probably be on the forefront. Yes. Because in every situation, you're not necessarily dealing with identity. I don't see anything wrong with the party saying we are defenders of these things. Well, that's the same token, not using those things purely to obfuscate from its own failings. You can do both. I guess that's my point. You can do both. I don't think it's perfectly fair to sit at these guys who are identical to the Clintons. Like, come on. The only solution is getting on Trump train. If Bernie bros and sisters get on the Trump train, the Democrats will learn their lesson. Skip Rock. So, Skip, you're taking the Bob Ramirez approach. That's the Bob Ramirez strategy. If you get enough people to hit them in the knees. What about just saying no? Come on, Skip. What about the no train? The solidarity of no train. What about that train? What about that train? Because look, if you're on my channel, Skip, and I know you lean to the left, I mean to the right. If you're on my channel, you're on my channel for a reason. There has to be something that I'm saying that you say, okay, fair enough. Something. Whatever it is. Something. Where you've, with more than 51% have said, okay, it's not erroneous to my ears where I have to flee. It's enough where I can listen to them and say, okay, fair enough. I'm not a Democrat. Damn sure not a Republican. And yet you're here. What about the answer of just saying the solidarity of starting with no? I don't know who I want, but it's neither one of these. I would say meet me at no. Meet me at no. I don't necessarily think you need to join the quote-unquote Trump train. I don't like this gaming the system stuff. You vote for the person who you believe represents your interests. That's the honest system. That's the integrity of the system. Like, voting for Trump to try to hit somebody else is not the integrity of the system. In fact is, I think Trump is a maniac. I don't want that on my conscience. Let me say it that way. I don't want that on my conscience. Bob is only fair this Lord Trump. Bob is only fair to his Lord Trump. I would say that the issue is class, not identity. Bob, I agree with you. The issue is class, not identity. I agree. Democrats use identity purely to obfuscate from class. Full-throated, agree. What does that have to do with Trump? Because Trump is not going to do anything about nothing at all. He is not going to do anything about it. We don't even know if Jeff Sessions is going to go after stoners. Like, all of this is up in flux. The Democrats have been doing this Russian nonsense for 2 years. Part of it has been just to tie Trump's hands. And they've... Look, from a political standpoint, it has been an annoyance. It has been a pain in the ass. But at the very least, it has tied his hands to some degree. He still has done gross stuff. And the problem is that Russia stuff has sucked all the air out of the room. So the gross stuff that he's doing is kind of going beneath the sheets. I showed all of those things that he was doing. It was like, oh, this is so gross. And yet the public looks up at him and says, he's not doing a bad job. He's not doing a bad job. So it's like, oh, that's gross. That's gross. Stable, genius, progressive. Good for you, Jamal, for not falling into idiotic, simple-minded approach of supporting Trump because you know Democrats suck it off. Oh, fuck no. Yeah, he's fucking horrible. Neither is an option. Neither is an option. Null is an option. Yes, no, true, false, null. No, neither, nothing. Those are options. Skip Rock, Trump is the best candidate ever. Everything is the swamp's fault. What? But he's putting alligators in the swamp. Skip, come on. He's putting alligators with fucking chainsaws on their heads. Skip, you're trolling me, man. You're trolling me, Skip. You're trolling me, Skip. Bob Ramirez. Yep, Jamal has nowhere else to go, so he'll support Clintonism or just stay home, vote Greens. Voting Green is not the same thing as supporting Clintonism. A lot of times I play devil's advocate on here to encourage a further idea and discussion. I agree with you more than it probably comes across in this chat. That's funny. Skip Rock, you drop your S's. Well, I think Skip Rock is trolling me. He has to be trolling me. Best candidate ever. It's the swamp's fault. Swamp's fault, my ass. Swamp spot my ass. All right, I'm gonna end this here. I have a few more. I'm gonna be in and out for the day, so let's kick the morning off right. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you guys can always support the patron. This one went magnificently long. Sometimes when I do my live videos, the videos go long, and I have a hard time gauging. It's like there's something I want to say, and when I'm having conversations, I tend to overemphasize a point, even in real life, because it's like, all right, I'm trying to nail the point in, and I'm trying to make sure the person understands the point is really understand it. Well, visually, there's no feedback. The only feedback is just me, and so for me, the feedback is just me. So it's like, all right, I think that's good. I think that's good. Look at the time. Oh shit, the time is one of those. So sorry, this one ran a little bit long. I will try to be a little bit more concise in the ones to come. But I like doing live, and so I'm trying to get better at I'm trying to get better at just being more concise live. I can do it when I do it locally, but all right, guys, I'll end it here. You all have a good one. I will see you guys probably within the next 20-30 minutes. Thanks, everyone.